The 1980s didn't just give us synthesizers and shoulder pads. It gave us the wildest, most radical decade of American drag racing ever witnessed. This was the era when computers met carburetors, when fuel injection rewrote the rulebook, and when quarter-mile times dropped so fast that the record books couldn't keep up. Today, we're counting down the 12 best vintage drag race cars out of the 1980s. Machines that rewrote history, one burnout at a time, son. Number 12, the 1984 Oldsmobile, Hurst Olds. Not every drag car was born on the strip. Some started life as limited edition factory muscle before finding their way to the starting line. And the 1984 Hurst Olds proved that, even in the malaise era's final gasps, Detroit still remembered how to build something special. This wasn't the thundering monster of 1970 or 68, but it represented something equally important: the refusal to let the dream die completely. Under that black and silver hood sat a 307 cubic inch Oldsmobile V8, rated at a modest 180 horsepower from the factory. But that factory rating meant nothing to the weekend warriors who saw potential where others saw limitation. These cars became sleeper sensations at small-town drag strips across America, especially after enthusiasts bolted on modern fuel injection systems and forced induction setups that the original engineers never imagined. The Hurst Olds wasn't the fastest car of 1984, but it was accessible, tunable, and looked absolutely menacing in that two-tone lightning rod shifter configuration. What made this car special wasn't just its heritage or its styling. It was the fact that in an era when most domestic performance cars were struggling to break 14 seconds in the quarter mile, a properly prepared Hurst Olds could dip into the mid-13s with bolt-on modifications and basic tuning. The chassis was surprisingly stiff thanks to its G-body platform, and the shorter wheelbase meant quicker weight transfer during launches. Drag racers discovered they could extract serious performance from these Oldsmobiles without requiring a full tube frame rebuild. By the late 80s, modified Hurst Olds machines were running consistent 12-second passes at regional events, proving that the spirit of muscle car performance hadn't vanished. It had just been sleeping, waiting for the right hands to wake it up. Today, these cars remain undervalued compared to their earlier siblings, but to those who raced them on Friday nights under sodium lights, they represented pure American defiance against an era that tried to kill horsepower. Number 11, the 1987 Buick Grand National GNX. When Buick partnered with McLaren Performance Technologies and ASC to create the GNX, they weren't trying to build a comfortable cruiser. They built a weapon. Only 547 of these turbocharged monsters left the factory, each one painted in black over gray with red accents that whispered menace. This wasn't your grandfather's Buick. This was a technological showcase wrapped in street-legal bodywork that embarrassed Corvettes and terrified anything that lined up beside it. The heart of the GNX was a turbocharged and intercooled 3.8-liter V6 that generated 276 horsepower and 3 160-pound-feet of torque, according to the factory. But everyone knew Buick was sandbagging those numbers. Real-world dyno tests revealed closer to 300 horsepower at the crank, and the torque figure was similarly conservative. What mattered was the result: 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.7 seconds, and quarter-mile times in the high 12-second range, straight from the showroom floor. The GNX sat lower than the standard Grand National thanks to a specially tuned suspension with stiffer springs and panhard rod rear suspension geometry. The transmission was the heavy-duty 200 turbo hydromatic with a higher stall speed torque converter that launched like a dragster. The rear end was strengthened, the brakes were upgraded, and every single mechanical component was chosen to handle serious abuse. This was a factory drag car that you could daily drive, register, and insure like any other Buick. Drag racers immediately recognized the potential. With simple modifications like a boost controller, free-flowing exhaust, and performance chip, GNX owners were breaking into the 11-second range. More serious builds with upgraded turbos and fuel systems pushed deep into the tens. The turbocharged V6 architecture meant these cars made absurd power with relatively simple modifications compared to naturally aspirated V8s that required extensive internal work to achieve similar numbers. What truly elevated the GNX into legend status was its sleeper appearance. From the outside, it looked like a slightly more aggressive version of the already intimidating Grand National, but that understated appearance meant unsuspecting challengers had no idea what they were facing until the Christmas tree lit up and the Buick vanished in a cloud of tire smoke. Today, clean GNX examples command well over $100,000, and their quarter-mile dominance in the late 80s cemented their status as one of the greatest turbocharged performance cars America ever produced. Number 10. The 1985 Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z. The third-generation Camaro had finally found its footing by 1985. And the IROC-Z represented the pinnacle of what Chevrolet could build within the constraints of the decade. Named after the International Race of Champions series, this wasn't just a graphics package. It was a comprehensive performance upgrade that transformed the standard Camaro into something genuinely quick. The IROC-Z brought handling, braking, and just enough power to make weekend drag racing not just possible, but competitive. The top engine option was the 5.0-liter or 305 cubic inch tuned port injection V8, producing 215 horsepower. That might sound modest today, but in 1985, it represented serious output, especially considering the fuel injection system's tunability. The TPI system used individual fuel injectors for each cylinder and a sophisticated engine computer that drag racers quickly learned to reprogram. What made the IROC-Z special was its willingness to accept more power without major structural changes. These Camaros weren't purpose-built drag cars from the factory, but they became drag strip favorites because of their accessible performance and massive aftermarket support. A set of headers, a cam swap, and some computer tuning could drop the quarter-mile time from the factory's low 15-second average down to the high 13s. More dedicated builds with headwork, larger throttle bodies, and nitrous injection systems pushed into the 12s without requiring exotic parts or machine shop miracles. The chassis was surprisingly capable for an affordable production car. The McPherson strut, front suspension, and torque arm rear setup provided decent weight transfer during launches, and the lighter curb weight compared to contemporary Mustangs meant less mass to accelerate. Drag racers appreciated the wide range of gear ratios available in the rear differential, allowing them to optimize for either quick launches or top-end speed depending on track length and competition. By the late 80s, IROC-Z Camaros were fixtures at drag strips nationwide. They weren't the fastest cars out there, but they represented what made American drag racing special, taking something affordable and streetable and pushing it to perform beyond its original design parameters. These cars taught a generation of enthusiasts about fuel injection tuning, weight reduction, and the physics of traction. Today, clean IROC-Z examples with low mileage command respect, both as collectibles and as vintage race platforms that still have what it takes to run competitive times in nostalgia classes. Number 9. The 1988 Ford Mustang GT. By 1988, Ford had been building the Fox body Mustang for almost a decade, and they'd finally perfected the formula. The 5.0-liter or 302 cubic inch high-output V8 now produced 225 horsepower, thanks to improved cylinder heads and a revised camshaft profile. But the real story wasn't the factory power. It was what these Mustangs became in the hands of drag racers who saw their incredible potential for modification. The Fox body platform was light, weighing in at just over 3,000 pounds. That low curb weight meant every horsepower gain translated directly into quicker elapsed times. The solid rear axle, while criticized by road course enthusiasts, was perfect for drag racing. It provided predictable weight transfer and could handle enormous power levels with aftermarket support. The aftermarket for these Mustangs was unlike anything else in the 1980s. You could build an entire car from catalog parts without ever visiting a machine shop. Drag racers loved the Mustang GT because it was affordable and infinitely upgradable. A weekend warrior could start with bolt-on parts like cold air intake, exhaust headers, and underdrive pulleys to dip into the high 13-second range. More serious builds added superchargers or turbochargers, nitrous oxide systems, forged internal engine components, and stronger transmissions. The sky was the limit, and the Mustang accepted it all without complaint. By the late 80s, modified Fox body Mustangs were dominating street classes at drag events across America. Some remained street-legal daily drivers that ran low 12s. Others were full race cars with tube chassis and exotic engine combinations running in the 8s. The platform's versatility meant you could build exactly the car you wanted at exactly the budget you could afford. It was democratic performance in its purest form. The 1988 Mustang GT wasn't revolutionary from the factory. but it became revolutionary in the hands of enthusiasts who pushed the envelope every weekend. These cars proved that you didn't need exotic Italian engineering or massive displacement to go fast in a straight line. You just needed a solid foundation, American V8 torque, and the determination to keep turning wrenches. Today, clean Fox body Mustangs are experiencing a massive resurgence in collector interest, with pristine examples commanding prices that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. Number 8. The 1989 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am GTA. While the Camaro IROC-Z got most of the attention, its Pontiac cousin deserved equal respect on the drag strip. The 1989 Firebird Trans Am GTA represented the absolute pinnacle of third-generation F-body performance, combining the same 305 cubic inch tuned port injection V8 with unique suspension tuning and styling that screamed 1980s excess in the best possible way. This was the thinking person's muscle car, offering refinement and technology alongside straight-line speed. The GTA package included the most powerful engine available, WS6 suspension with specific spring rates and shock valving, performance brakes with four-wheel disc setup, and 16-inch wheels with performance rubber. But what really set the GTA apart was its attention to detail. The aerodynamic ground effects weren't just styling, they actually improved high-speed stability. The seats were designed for aggressive driving. Everything about this car suggested that Pontiac understood what serious drivers wanted. From the factory, the GTA ran mid-15-second quarter miles, respectable, but not earth-shattering. Where it excelled was in its potential for modification. The same aftermarket parts that worked on the IROC-Z Camaro fit the Firebird, but the Trans Am had slightly better weight distribution thanks to its unique nose design. Drag racers discovered that the GTA's more aerodynamic shape actually provided a small advantage at higher speeds, worth a few tenths in the quarter mile compared to equivalent Camaros. The real magic happened when enthusiasts started serious engine modifications. The GTA's tuned port injection system responded beautifully to computer tuning, and the strong rear differential could handle significant power increases. A common combination involved ported cylinder heads, a more aggressive camshaft, long tube headers, and custom programming. This package typically yielded around 260 to 280 horsepower at the wheels and could consistently break into the high 13-second range. More ambitious builds added forced induction. Supercharged GTAs became particularly popular in the late 80s and early 90s, with centrifugal blower kits pushing power levels over 400 horsepower. These cars could run consistent 12-second quarters while remaining fully street legal and civilized enough for daily driving. The GTA proved that late 80s automotive technology could deliver both performance and livability, a combination that earlier muscle cars struggled to achieve. Today, clean GTA examples are harder to find than IROC-Z Camaros, making them increasingly collectible among enthusiasts who remember the golden age of affordable American performance. Number 7. The 1983 Ford Mustang GT 5.0. Before the 1988 model perfected the formula, the 1983 Mustang GT 5.0 wrote the first chapter of Fox body dominance. This was the year that Ford finally dropped the 5.0-liter V8 back into the Mustang after years of four-cylinder and anemic V6 offerings. It wasn't the most powerful car of 1983, but it represented something crucial: the return of American V8 performance to an affordable platform that anyone could modify. The 5.0-liter high-output engine produced 175 horsepower, which sounds laughable by modern standards but was genuinely impressive for 1983. More importantly, it was a real V8 with a carburetor and traditional architecture that hot rodders immediately understood. The engine responded beautifully to basic modifications, and the aftermarket exploded with parts designed specifically for these cars. Within months of the car's release, speed shops across America were selling intake manifolds, camshafts, and exhaust systems specifically engineered for the new Mustang. Drag racers gravitated toward the 1983 GT because it was cheap, plentiful, and bulletproof. The platform could handle enormous power with minimal chassis reinforcement. The solid rear axle was the same basic design that had worked in Mustangs for decades, meaning every trick and technique from the 60s and 70s still applied. Young racers could buy a used example for a few $1,000s and have a genuine performance platform that could embarrass cars costing 5 times as much. What made the 1983 model special in drag racing history was its timing. This car arrived exactly when a new generation of enthusiasts was discovering the sport. These weren't their father's Mustang. They were lighter, more efficient, and accepted modern technology while maintaining traditional hot rod values. A properly set up 83 GT could run mid-14-second quarter-mile stock and dip into the 13s with basic bolt-ons like headers, intake, and gears. More serious builds went much further. By the late 80s, 83 Mustangs with built engines, nitrous systems, and weight reduction were running in the low 12s and high 11s on street tires. Some became full race cars with exotic engine swaps and ran times that would have been considered impossible just a few years earlier. The 1983 Mustang GT 5.0 might not have been the fastest car of its era, but it ignited a movement that defined drag racing for the next 2 decades. Today, clean examples are increasingly rare, with most having been modified, wrecked, or simply worn out from hard use. The survivors represent the beginning of something special. Number 6. The 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe. Not every drag car needs to be small and nimble. Sometimes you need sheer presence, aerodynamic efficiency, and the kind of torque that can move serious mass down the quarter mile. The 1987 Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe brought NASCAR aerodynamics to the street, and drag racers immediately recognized its potential. This wasn't a car built specifically for drag racing, but its combination of style, power, and surprising capability made it a strip favorite throughout the late 80s. Under the hood sat the same 305 cubic inch V8 that powered the Camaro and Firebird, producing 280 horsepower in SS trim. But the Monte Carlo had something its smaller siblings didn't: presence. This car looked serious rolling to the line, with its swept-back roofline, aggressive ground effects, and wide stance. The Aero Coupe variant featured a unique fastback rear window design that reduced drag at high speeds, providing a measurable advantage in quarter-mile racing where terminal velocity mattered. The Monte Carlo SS wasn't the quickest car off the line. Its heavier curb weight, around 3,500 pounds, meant slower 60-foot times compared to lighter Mustangs and Camaros, but the car made up for it with excellent mid-range pull and superior top-end performance. Drag racers discovered that on longer tracks or in competitions emphasizing trap speed, the Monte Carlo could compete with and often beat lighter cars with similar power levels. Modification potential was substantial. The G-body platform was robust and could handle significant power increases without extensive chassis work. Enthusiasts added the same performance parts used on Camaros: headers, exhaust systems, camshafts, and nitrous oxide injection. A well-built Monte Carlo SS could break into the high 13-second range with bolt-on parts and tuning. More aggressive builds with forced induction or serious engine work pushed into the 12. What really set the Aero Coupe apart was its intimidation factor. Something about a big black Monte Carlo sitting at the staging lanes created psychological pressure on competitors. This wasn't a lightweight sports car. This was a heavyweight bruiser that moved with surprising violence once the tree went green. The car's NASCAR heritage added mystique, and the relative rarity of the Aero Coupe package meant spotting one at the strip was always an event. By the early 90s, Monte Carlo SS drag cars had developed a cult following. Some racers built full-tilt race versions with tube chassis and exotic engine combinations. Others kept them street legal and used them as dual-purpose machines that could run errands on Monday and run 12s on Saturday. Today, clean Aero Coupe examples are highly collectible, representing a unique moment when NASCAR styling met street performance. They're reminders that drag racing success doesn't always come from having the lightest car or the most power. Sometimes it's about having the right combination of factors that work together perfectly. Number 5. The 1986 Chevrolet Corvette. The fourth-generation Corvette, introduced in 1984 and refined by '86, represented a dramatic departure from traditional Corvette design philosophy. Gone was the chrome-bumpered cruiser. In its place stood a sleek, angular machine that looked like it had been designed in a wind tunnel, because it had. The 1986 model year brought the most powerful engine yet, and drag racers quickly discovered that America's sports car could hold its own in straight-line competition against purpose-built muscle machines. The 350 cubic inch or 5.7-liter L98 V8 produced 230 horsepower in '86, but the real advantage was the sophisticated chassis and advanced electronics. The Corvette featured aluminum suspension components, composite materials in the body structure, and a sophisticated Doug Nash 4+3 manual transmission that drag racers either loved or immediately replaced with automatics. The car's low center of gravity and near-perfect weight distribution meant excellent traction off the line when properly set up. From the factory, the Corvette ran high 14-second quarter miles, impressive for a luxury sports car, but not extraordinary by drag racing standards. What made it special was how it responded to modifications. The tuned port injection system, similar to the Camaro and Firebird but with unique tuning, could be optimized for serious power gains. The strong rear differential and advanced traction control system, which could be disabled for racing, provided a solid foundation for building something truly quick. Drag racers approached the Corvette differently than other platforms. Some kept the sophisticated chassis and suspension intact, focusing on engine modifications and weight reduction to maximize the car's natural advantages. These builds typically featured ported heads, custom camshafts, headers, exhaust systems, and aggressive tuning that pushed power over 300 horsepower. With drag radial tires and suspension tuning, these Corvettes could consistently run in the 13s. Others went full race car, stripping interiors, installing roll cages, and adding serious forced induction or nitrous systems. Supercharged C4 Corvettes became particularly popular, with Roots-type blowers pushing power levels over 500 horsepower. These cars could run in the low 12 to high 11-second range while maintaining street legality. A few extreme builds went even further, with turbocharged or big block swapped Corvettes running in the 10s and pulling massive crowds at bracket racing events. The Corvette's role in 1980s drag racing was unique. It proved that a sophisticated, high-tech sports car could compete with traditional muscle car platforms. The car appealed to an older demographic with more disposable income, leading to better-funded builds and more professional approaches to racing. Today, C4 Corvettes remain undervalued in the collector market, but enthusiasts who remember their quarter-mile capabilities know they represented a crucial evolution in American performance car development. Number 4. The 1989 Dodge Daytona Shelby. Carroll Shelby's magic didn't end with 60s-era Cobras and Mustangs. By the late 1980s, he'd partnered with Dodge to create turbocharged front-wheel drive performance cars that challenged everything people thought they knew about drag racing. The 1989 Dodge Daytona Shelby represented the pinnacle of this partnership, combining Shelby's performance expertise with Chrysler's turbocharged 4-cylinder technology to create something genuinely quick and completely unexpected. Under the hood sat a 2.2-liter turbocharged and intercooled 4-cylinder engine, producing 175 horsepower and 2 105 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers sound modest, but the Daytona Shelby's secret weapon was its light curb weight of just over 2,700 pounds and sophisticated electronic boost control. The car featured an adjustable wastegate that allowed drivers to increase boost pressure for racing, turning a mild-mannered commuter into a legitimate mid-14-second drag car with the twist of a dial. Front-wheel drive drag racing was controversial in the 1980s. Traditional racers dismissed it as impossible to launch effectively, but Dodge engineers and Shelby's team developed solutions. The Daytona featured specific suspension geometry designed to minimize torque steer and weight transfer issues. The limited slip differential helped put power down, and the McPherson strut front suspension could be tuned to optimize launch characteristics. Smart racers learned to use techniques like left foot braking to control weight transfer and maximize traction. What made the Daytona Shelby truly special on the strip was its modification potential. The turbocharged 4-cylinder responded beautifully to simple upgrades. An upgraded boost controller, free-flowing exhaust, and larger intercooler could push power over 220 horsepower at the crank. More serious builds added upgraded turbochargers, forged internal engine components, and aggressive tuning that produced over 300 horsepower. These modified Daytonas shocked muscle car owners by running high 12 to low 13-second quarters. The car's underdog status made victories even sweeter. There was something deeply satisfying about smoking a V8 Mustang with a 4-cylinder front-wheel drive Dodge. The Daytona Shelby proved that drag racing success wasn't about tradition or displacement. It was about power-to-weight ratio, traction management, and driver skill. The car attracted a dedicated following of enthusiasts who appreciated its technological sophistication and giant killing potential. By the early 90s, modified Daytona Shelbys had become fixtures in import and small displacement racing classes. Some built full race versions with extreme modifications running in the 11s. The car helped bridge the gap between traditional American V8 drag racing and the emerging import performance scene that would dominate the 90s. Today, clean Daytona Shelby examples are rare, with most having been modified, crashed, or simply worn out. The survivors represent an important moment when Chrysler proved that American performance could come in unexpected packages. Number 3. The 1987 Buick Regal Grand National. Before the GNX wrote the final chapter, the standard Grand National spent years dominating drag strips and embarrassing anything that didn't take it seriously. The 1987 model represented the culmination of Buick's turbocharged V6 development, producing 245 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of torque from just 3.8 liters of displacement. This was the car that proved forced induction was the future of performance and made big block V8s seem antiquated by comparison. The Grand National's all-black appearance earned it the nickname Darth Vader's car, and the menacing aesthetic perfectly matched its performance capabilities. From the factory, these Buicks ran high 13 to low 14 second-quarter miles with minimal effort. The turbocharged V6 spooled quickly, delivering massive mid-range torque that launched the car off the line with surprising violence. The 200 turbo hydromatic transmission shifted smoothly and could handle significant power increases without requiring expensive upgrades. What made the Grand National a drag racing legend was its incredible tunability. The engine management system could be reprogrammed, the turbocharger could be adjusted for higher boost pressure, and the entire drivetrain could handle substantial power increases with minimal mechanical changes. A simple boost increase and exhaust modification pushed power over 300 horsepower and dropped quarter-mile times into the mid-13s. More aggressive builds with upgraded turbochargers, fuel systems, and intercoolers produced over 400 horsepower and ran consistent 12-second passes. The Grand National attracted a diverse following. Older enthusiasts appreciated its luxury amenities and comfortable ride when not racing. Younger racers loved its tuning potential and sleeper appearance. The car worked equally well as a daily driver or weekend warrior, making it practical for people who couldn't afford separate cars for street and strip use. The relatively low purchase price, especially for used examples by the late 80s, meant accessibility for enthusiasts of all economic backgrounds. By 1988 and 89, Grand Nationals dominated street racing and bracket racing events across America. The aftermarket exploded with performance parts specifically designed for these cars. Companies specialized in building extreme Grand National race engines, producing over 1,000 horsepower. Street-driven examples running in the tens became relatively common, and a few dedicated race cars pushed into the 8-second range with exotic modifications. The Grand National proved multiple important concepts. It demonstrated that turbocharged performance could be reliable and daily drivable. It showed that American manufacturers could compete with European turbo technology. Most importantly, it created a devoted following that persists today. Clean Grand National examples now command premium prices, with low-mileage cars selling for significantly more than their original sticker price. They're rolling proof that sometimes the best performance comes from unexpected places. Number 2. The 1982 through 86 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. Before the IROC-Z took over, the Z28 nameplate represented the pinnacle of third-generation Camaro performance. These early to mid-80s models might have had less power than later variants, but they established the template for what made third-gen F-bodies great drag racing platforms. The combination of relatively lightweight, strong chassis design, and massive aftermarket support meant these Camaros became foundation stones for thousands of drag racing projects throughout the decade. The Z28 package included the 5.0-liter V8, special suspension tuning, upgraded brakes, and distinctive ground effects and graphics. Early models, with carburetors, produced around 165 horsepower, while later fuel-injected versions pushed closer to 200 horses. Neither configuration set quarter-mile records from the factory, but that was never the point. The Z28 was a platform waiting for enthusiasts to unlock its potential. Drag racers loved these early third-gen Camaros because they represented affordable performance with unlimited upgrade paths. The aftermarket supported everything from mild street builds to full-blown race cars. A typical weekend warrior build might include headers, intake modifications, camshaft upgrades, and rear gear changes, all bolt-on parts requiring minimal machine work. These combinations typically produced 14-second quarter miles, respectable for street-driven cars in the mid-80s. More serious builds went much further. Engine swaps became common, with built small blocks or even big block Chevrolet engines replacing factory power plants. Nitrous oxide systems added instant power at the push of a button. Weight reduction programs stripped interiors and replaced body panels with fiberglass replicas. Suspension modifications optimized weight transfer and launch characteristics. The Z28 accepted all of this modification with minimal complaint, proving that GM engineers had built a fundamentally sound platform. By the late 80s, Z28-based drag cars were running everything from street classes to full-blown professional categories. Some remained street-legal daily drivers, running mid-13s. Others became dedicated race cars with tube chassis, exotic engine combinations, and times in the single-digit seconds. The platform's versatility meant you could build exactly the car you wanted at exactly the budget you could afford. The Z28's importance in 1980s drag racing history cannot be overstated. These cars taught thousands of enthusiasts about hot rodding, drag racing technique, and performance modification. They were affordable enough for young people to buy and modify, creating a generation of racers and builders. Today, clean Z28 examples are becoming collectible, especially early models with low mileage and original configurations. But the majority served their purpose. They got raced hard, modified extensively, and eventually retired or reborn as something even faster. That's exactly what they were meant to do. Number 1. The 1985 through 87 Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z with tuned port injection. When Chevrolet combined the IROC-Z package with the tuned port injection 5.0-liter V8 for 1985, they created what would become the definitive drag racing platform of the late 1980s. This wasn't just another performance variant. This was the car that thousands of racers chose as their foundation for building everything from mild street machines to 9-second monsters. The IROC-Z TPI represented the perfect intersection of factory performance, aftermarket support, tunability, and accessibility. The tuned port injection system was revolutionary for its time. Unlike carburation or throttle body injection, TPI used individual port injectors and sophisticated computer controls to optimize fuel delivery across the entire RPM range. From the factory, the system produced 215 to 225 horsepower, depending on model year and transmission choice. That was impressive for the mid-80s. The real magic happened when enthusiasts learned to reprogram the engine control module and optimize fuel and timing maps for performance. The IROC-Z chassis was fundamentally sound for drag racing. The McPherson strut front suspension and torque arm rear setup provided good weight transfer characteristics during launches. The body structure was relatively stiff, minimizing flex that could affect traction. The rear differential came in various gear ratios, allowing racers to optimize for their specific needs. Most importantly, the chassis could handle enormous power levels before requiring extensive reinforcement, meaning enthusiasts could focus budget on engine performance rather than structural upgrades. Drag racers approached IROC-Z TPI modifications in stages. Stage 1 typically included mass airflow sensor modifications, larger throttle bodies, free-flowing exhaust with headers, and computer tuning. This combination pushed power close to 250 horsepower at the wheels and dropped quarter-mile times into the high 13-second range. Stage 2 added camshaft upgrades, ported cylinder heads, and nitrous oxide injection systems. These cars consistently ran mid to low 13s and remained fully street legal. Stage 3 builds went much further. Forged pistons, stronger connecting rods, Aggressive camshaft profiles and serious nitrous systems pushed power over 500 horsepower. Some builders added superchargers or turbochargers, creating forced induction monsters that made over 600 horsepower and ran quarter miles in the low 11 to high 10-second range. A few extreme examples with full race preparation ran even quicker, proving that the IROC-Z platform could compete at professional levels when properly developed. The aftermarket for these cars was absolutely massive. Every major performance parts manufacturer offered products specifically designed for TPI Camaros. You could build an entire car from catalog parts without custom fabrication. This accessibility meant enthusiasts of all skill levels could participate. Beginners could install bolt-on parts. Experts could build exotic race engines. Everyone found their place in the IROC-Z community. What truly cemented the IROC-Z TPI's #1 status was its cultural impact. These cars appeared at every drag strip in America throughout the late 80s and into the 90s. They dominated street racing. They filled brackets at organized events. They taught thousands of people about drag racing, performance modification, and the satisfaction of making something fast. Every magazine featured IROC-Z builds. Every speed shop had parts specifically for these Camaros. The platform became synonymous with affordable American performance. The computer-controlled fuel injection also positioned the IROC-Z perfectly for the future. While carbureted cars became obsolete, TPI Camaros taught enthusiasts about engine management systems, data logging, and electronic tuning. These skills transferred directly to later fuel-injected platforms, making IROC-Z owners the vanguard of the electronic performance revolution. The car bridged traditional hot rodding and modern tuning culture. Today, clean IROC-Z TPI examples command serious money in the collector market, especially low-mileage cars with desirable options like T-tops and 5-speed manual transmissions. But most served their purpose. They got raced hard, modified extensively, and eventually retired after years of faithful service. The platform's impact extends far beyond its production numbers. It defined an era, created a culture, and proved that American performance could evolve while maintaining its essential character. The IROC-Z TPI wasn't just the best drag car of the 1980s. It was the car that kept the muscle car dream alive during a decade that could have killed it forever. The 1980s gave us more than just great drag racing cars. It gave us the blueprint for modern performance, the understanding that technology enhances rather than replaces raw horsepower, that affordability and speed.